Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. I selected that this webinar would last 2 hours, but I don't think we'll go that long, but we'll see. So just a few housekeeping items. I did mute everyone. So if you have any questions, there's a little hand that you could raise, and then we'll answer any questions at the end of that section or at the end of the training. And this webinar will be recorded and posted on Schoolability YouTube by next Monday. And so you can watch this for future. And then also we'll be providing some material which includes this some instructions that have screenshots as well as the PowerPoint. So some things that we're going to go over include what's new within the software, verifying the setup, the load and review data, fixing the errors, printing and submitting, and then we'll have any questions at the end. Here's a little reference or checklist that you can use when you're working on the W-2s, and then I have more detail within the PowerPoint as well as the instructions. So first thing, what's new? Everyone likes new things. And so what the software did this for 2018, it wasn't a whole lot of changes. However, if you do have an org or a system that processes W-2s by org, we have a section in there for submitter information that can be entered by the user. And then also users are able to save the files to their desktop, which is available on other activities. And we're going to go over this a little bit later in the presentation. Okay, so now let's go over reviewing the setup. We're going to identify what software is loaded. We're going to look at the organization record for contact information setup. We're going to review the deductions and contribution setup as well as add-ons. To view the software, or to view what version is on the software, you click on the Help button in About, and it identifies the software version here within this screen. So for all Schoolability systems, this has been updated, so you do not have to worry about this. The organization record. So this is where the users identify the contact information as well as inputting the new submitter information. So to do this, you click on System, Setup, Organization, and then you go to Section 9. So this is a good idea for all users to review this information. So let's look at the actual software and see what that looks like. And this is user-based, so if you do not have this, if you're not able to view this, you can reach out to support to make that change for you so you have access. So System, Setup, Organizations. And this is scrambled data, so it's not real. So I'm going to click on Section 9. And here's where we have the school information, which is the employer information, their address, the contact information, and then here's where we have the submitter information within these fields here. And the field detail or the description of what these fields stand for are identified in the detailed instructions. Okay, so now let's look at contribution and deduction setup. And again, this is user permission. You do have to access this through all org, so not every system allows access for users. Typically, if you're on a New Mexico SA system, that you do have to submit a ticket to make a change. if you have your own system, you may request access to this section. We just need to be careful that whatever change is made to the deduction or contribution management, it can impact all orgs within that system, so we just have to be careful about that. So to access this, you go to All Org, HR Payroll, Setup, Payroll, and Contribution Management. So if you notice here, this section, this screenshot here is for contributions. This one is for deductions. Box 2 identifies the W-2 information for contributions, and box 3 is for deductions. So let's go ahead and take a look at that of what's in the system or the software. So I'm going to go to All Orgs, Setup, Payroll, and we have Contribution Management and Deduction Management. I'm going to go ahead and select just medical for this scenario. I'm going to open the record. And right here, medical is defaulted to W-2 box 12, the category DD, and pension is no. So for all New Mexico systems, because support does help with creating or making changes to these deductions and contributions, they should be correct. However, it's a good idea to review those. The other area where it does impact W-2s is in the add-on setup. And this can be located within the org, HR Payroll, Setup, Payroll, and add-ons. And typically where this is reported for W-2 purposes is if you have an employee who has life insurance for more than $50,000 per year and they need to be taxed. So this is the box where you would input that information. This isn't typical, so I'm not going to go over this. However, if you need assistance with this area, you can contact customer support. Okay, so that was the wrap up of reviewing setup. So just to reiterate of what we looked at the organization setup to make sure that the contact information is updated and correct. We also looked at the contribution management and deduction management. And as I had indicated, for the most part, these deduction and contributions for the New Mexico schools or systems should be up to date, but it's a good idea to review. Okay, so after reviewing the setup, what we're going to want to do is look at load and review data. There is going to be some prep work that is recommended for users to start on. Once all payrolls are processed, then we're going to want to generate some reports to verify the data, and then we're going to want to do a reconciliation where we're comparing to the 941s, and we may also have some other internal reconciliations. So what we do recommend is users should generate a test file and submit to AccuAge since now, just to make sure that there are no problems with the file. And in order to do that, we do have to load the data. So where we're going to go is within the org, HR Payroll, Processes, Tax Reporting, and W-2 Reporting. We're going to open up to the 2018 year, click on Tasks, and Load. So let's see what that looks like. I'm going to go ahead and close these. So we're going to go to Processes, Tax Reporting, W-2 Reporting. Open up the tax year of 2018. Click on Tasks and Load. Yes. So it's going to load the data for us. What it's doing, it's pulling all the information for the payrolls that have been processed. Now to download the test file, we open up the record again, click Tasks, Generate Test, and yes. Right now, this file, the test file within the first phase, isn't available to save to the desktop. Therefore, users will need to submit a ticket to support requesting the files be sent to them. And this has been reported to Escape, and more than likely this will not be fixed until the following fiscal year or calendar year. Okay, so now what we're going to want to do is before we can actually work on the W-2s or finalizing them, all payrolls for the fiscal year need to be processed. However, we should start looking at the W-2 reconciliation just to make sure that we don't have any problems. What that allows us to do is make any corrections within payrolls before December 31st. However, we'd also have the option to process any fixes after December 31st. And then also there's still another option to modify the actual W-2. And we're going to cover that in a little bit. But this process here that I'm going to go over for reports and reconciliation, although we may be doing this beforehand, before the payrolls are processed to catch anything, we're going to follow this same process when all payrolls have been completed and closed. So one of the things that I do recommend and I love is using the favorites. So as you can see here, I have set up several favorites for the W-2 processing or generating of reports. And so this helps because every year I have these set up and I just have to go to the favorites and generate. So let's see what that looks like. So I'm going to go to reports, report favorites. And I'm going to select W-2. So I'm only looking at the ones that I have set up for W-2. When I open up the first one, notice that I set it up as a favorite and I'm using the mnemonics so I don't have to type in the date. It automatically sets it based on beginning calendar and ending calendar. So here I'm going to go ahead and generate as a PDF. And this is what I'm generating is the Pay-01. So the type of reports that I have recommended to run is the Pay-01. I'm going to go ahead and open up the other reports that I have as my favorites since I already generated them. This is the Pay-05, which is the monthly tax summary. And this is the total amount for the calendar year. The Pay-12, this one is specific to the type of deduction that we are selecting. In this case, I selected ERB for this org. Next one is the Pay-27, which summarizes the W-2s that are going to be generated. And then lastly, one of the other ones that we're going to generate is the payroll errors. In this case, I don't have any errors, but I did provide an example on the PowerPoint that we'll go over in just a bit. So what I'm doing here is I'm comparing, I do have a template that I use to reconcile my payrolls, my quarterlies, and then eventually the W-2s. And we will provide this template to you all. And so what I am doing is, this one is comparing the W3 to the 941s, making sure I have no differences. Then what I'm also going to be comparing when I look at the ERB is I am comparing that the box 14 does tie to the reports that are being generated. And in this case, I do have a difference of $11.13. So I'm going to have to investigate why I have this difference. And where I'm getting this number from is if I come over here to the W3, I have what's going to be reported on box 14, 181, 448, 11. And when I compare it to this, there is this difference of $11.13. So what this allows users to do is, being that it's before December 31st, I have an option to correct this within payroll processing before the year end. Now, in order to investigate why I have this difference, I can use this other report that I have as my favorite, and I use to investigate any differences. And this is the detail extract. So it is an X. So in this case, I'm going to select Excel data. So it's just going to export data like this. And what I have is I built a template to help to automatically summarize for me some difference, the information based on this data. So, and this template will be provided to you. What users do is they get the data and they copy all of this data. I'm going to copy all the way to the end. And then I'm going to copy this and I'm going to place this in the tab here called data. It's a good idea for users to delete the existing data and then paste it once it's generated. Then I'm going to refresh some pivot tables that help me summarize this information. So what I'm going to do here is, this is giving me the summary by employee, and I'm going to compare this other tab, which is the box 14 for ERB, to the pay 12. So I've already done this ahead of time, so I know when I come over here and look at Susan Toledo, here it's being reported at 756.12, and here it's 767.25. So the difference between the two is the $11.13. So I've identified the employee of what's causing this difference, and then now I'm going to have to dig in deeper and look at specific payrolls that were processed for her. And in that case, I'm going to look at the Pay 34 report and start diving in and looking at detail. And I'm not going to go over this. I'm not going to cover this in detail at this time. However, I wanted to show users that there are some ways that we can identify differences. And if you have that, or you encounter that, you can reach out to support and we'll assist you with trying to identify or give you ideas of how to identify those differences. Okay, so we went over the favorite reports. In general, what we're doing is we're reconciling to the 941s and identifying if there's any differences. At this point, we're going to want to fix any errors that we have. I've included some reports that we're going to want to look at. And then in order to fix those problems, we're going to need to either create a manual payroll before December 31st if we're in a time frame before December 31st. But if we encounter the problem after December 31st, we still have the option. And then, of course, we can edit the W-2. So to reiterate, these are the reports that you can generate. If you process a payroll, a special payroll, before or after, we're going to need to reload the data within the W-2 reporting since it was processed through payroll. And I had mentioned that there was a, for the Pay 38 report that the Pay 31 report that the system generates and identifies any errors. This is an example of the errors that will get populated. And typically where this comes into play is if you paid an employee in 2018 or 2017, and then they left the school, and in the beginning of 2018, you reimburse them for health insurance deductions that were processed. Well, those health insurance deductions are going to be a negative, so it's going to report a negative amount, which is incorrect, and it'll err with Social Security. So we're going to need to get those corrected and removed. Okay, so now we come to the point where we've processed all payrolls, we've reconciled, and we have no differences because we fixed all our errors. We're ready to print and submit. So we're printing, we're distributing to the employees, and then we're submitting to Social Security. So to print, we're going to go to Tasks and Print Forms. Then we're going to generate. Then we're going to download the W-2 file. So let's look at what that looks like in the system. We're going to come back to Processes, Tax Reporting, and W-2 Reporting. And actually, before we jump into that, I just wanted to point out within Employee W-2, this is where it identifies the detail of the 2018 record. So if we click Go for 2018, we're going to see all the employees and that are going to be reported. And if we open up that record, we can view in detail what's being reported. So if you notice that all of the fields are locked and cannot be edited at this point in time. But I did mention before that there is an option to edit the W-2, but that can only be done after we print and generate. And I'll show you how to do that in just a bit. So let's come back to W-2 reporting because we're ready to print. So we're going to open up the 2018 record. We're going to click Tasks, and we're going to click Print Employee Forms. So notice here in this column, none of them have been printed, but we have 54 to be printed. So I'm going to print. And it's going to generate the record here, or the file here, and I'm going to open up an Adobe Acrobat, and I'm going to save that to my desktop. Now notice that in printed, it has switched to 54. So at this point, I can click Tasks and Generate. Yes. So at this point, it locks the W-2 reporting. So at this point, I cannot make any more changes. And now I'm going to open up the file again, so that way I can download the file. So Task, Download W-2 file. And this one is available to save to your desktop. which does include the test file. So I did mention that there was one more option where you can modify the W-2 record. So to do that, we're going to go back to unprint the forms. So since I have already generated, the only way to do that is I have to roll back generate. So I'm going to click roll back. And I'm going to open up the record. And at this point, I can click roll back, close payroll changes. And if I only want to make one change to the employee record, I'm going to come back to the employee record that I want to change. So I'm going to open up this record. I'm going to click tasks and unprint. I'm going to open up the record again. I'm going to click tasks and edit. Oops. Actually, it does need to be closed, so it's going to prompt you with that. So I'm going to come back to employee W-2. And edit. So now notice that the fields are unlocked and I can actually edit at this point. And we want to be careful on what we're editing because it has to be items that were processed in the system. So in this case, what you could do is say that one of the box codes were incorrect and this should have been $10. We just need to make sure, though, that whatever is being reported is correct. And it is going to note that it has been changed. So from here, I can print employee form, view social. There's options here that are under the tasks menu. But before I have the option to generate the file, all of the W-2 forms have to be in the printed status. So notice I still have one. So I'm going to click Print Employee Forms. And it'll give me the one employee record that I changed. And then from this point, I will continue moving along and generating the record. And then downloading. We don't want to make changes on the W-2s if the files have been reported to Social Security. The system does not support W-2 or W-3X. Or I'm sorry, C. And some other resources that are available with the IRS are these publications, the W-2 file specification, and then of course within Schoolability we have the tools and how-to, and then we also have the resources that are available. Let me get on the system so you can see. We have online resources which are Escape supported, and then we have the Schoolability online. And I wanted just to show you real quickly This is an example of what the instructions look like. So as you can see, I do have screenshots and detail steps for the W-2 processing. And this will be provided to all the users. Along with the templates, which is the page 26, and then the year-end reconciliation. And this concludes the W-2 webinar. Do we have any questions?
They'll have to unmute themselves first. Can you hear me, Jolene?
I could hear you.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. I don't see any questions, and I apologize if I'm not seeing it. But if you want to ask a question, just please unmute, or you can follow up with a question via email, and then I can get it out to all the users. In the meantime, I will follow up with an email with all of the support items that I said I would send out, and then the webinar recording will be posted on YouTube by next week. Thank you and have a good day.
Thanks, Jolene.
Thank you.